It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Welcome to EdTech Mondays, Nigeria, a platform that facilitates critical conversations on the role of technology in teaching and learning to shape the future of education in Nigeria. Our conversation this June is focused on rethinking inclusive and accessible learning for all. In the last episode, we established that accessibility challenges faced by learners with disabilities are deeply systemic. Beyond identifying the gaps, in this episode, the question becomes, how do we intentionally design learning solutions that include everyone from the start? I'm Damilola Busari, and I'll be moderating the conversation. I still have my guests from the last episode, and they're continuing the conversation with me. Please welcome with me Chimezie Ucheaga, founder, Mavis Computel, Dr. Victor Ogumbiyi, CEO, Dawn AI Study, Chizoba Orji, a visually impaired teacher at Washington Memorial Grammar School, Onitsha, and Mubarak Aremu, convener of Access Ability. Let's get into today's conversation. In our last episode, one thing that was highlighted is the need to ensure that technology truly is inclusive. So I'm going to come to you, Dr. Victor Ogumbiyi. What does truly inclusive EdTech design look like in practice? I want you to break this down and give us what it really should be.
All right, thank you very much. I'd say for EdTech, now this education and technology, to be truly inclusive, it starts from the grassroots, the builders. Who are the people building this solution? And it's so disheartening that even some developers, designers, they don't consider building human-centered with inclusion and accessibility. Why would you want to build an EdTech product for a child that has either physical disability or cognitive disability, and you don't even understand what the spectrum look like? You don't have the knowledge. You should know as a developer that a child that has dyslexia, for example, you should build with dyslexia-friendly fonts. You should impute that while trying to maybe fine-tune your prototype, your wireframes, and the likes. So I say it starts with the builders first, and it also goes a long way in the sense that is most of educational tools out there are pretty much built for the mainstream users, so to say, neurotypical kids, right? So whoever is building these tools, you must understand that EdTech now built for people under the spectrum, whether physical disabled or cognitively disabled. You must put yourself in the picture. If product teams, if you need to maybe train your builders, right, let them go for courses that actually, because there's some courses called inclusive design thinking. Let them understand that, okay, these are the things to factor into place. Take, for example, someone that needs closed captioning or sign language, and you're using an American sign language to teach an African child. That doesn't work. So these are other things that should be considered as well.
Thank you very much. I'd like you to weigh in on this as well, Chimezie. What does truly inclusive EdTech design look like in practice?
So I echo a lot of his sentiments, and I just want to come at it from a slightly different angle. Usually when inclusivity means that when you're creating for people, you have people living with disabilities in mind as well, not just about when you're creating just for them. And so one of the things I noticed is that in trying to solve the mainstream problem, when you don't think enough about people living with disability, what happens most of the time is that they become an afterthought, and then it's too expensive to create just for them. But when you think with them in mind, when you are creating, like when we are creating our own products, we're seeing that to help those living with disability is just one of the normal functions of our own technology. So that's one of the things that we're seeing. So when you create with them in mind, you'll find out that it is actually possible to not have something that is too expensive for dealing with people living with disability. The other thing I would say is that as EdTech founders and creators, we shouldn't think we can solve all the problems. So when we're thinking inclusivity, we're saying, and if this is the mindset that every EdTech founder has, you'll find out that different people are going to solve different problems. We can't think of visually impaired, deaf, physically impaired, all of them. But who is the closest disability to our own demographic that we're building for? And if you're able to think that way, then you'll find out that all around the block, without having to make things a lot more expensive, you can actually start making sure that what you're building is inclusive. The last thing I would say concerning, like that type of thought in terms of for EdTech founders and solution builders is that when you have the mindset to think of marginalized people when you're developing, you'll actually find out that the type of innovation that you bring out will be even a lot better for the regular people. I'll give an example. He mentioned the friendly font for thinking about people with dyslexia, right? When you think of a very friendly font for them, bet me that the regular child would even find it a lot more friendly. So the reason why when we created our own tools, we were thinking about children in marginalized communities and hard to reach areas. So barriers like electricity, internet access, we already started thinking about those things. And when we now started thinking about people living with disabilities, like people with autism and the rest, the whole thing about the internet access and they're waiting, those things weren't a problem anymore. So you find out that when you think about them from the get-go, you'll find out that it becomes very useful for ordinary people. And I'm in an inclusive education conference right now, and I was just speaking to someone, and two things they told me. The person that invented predictive text actually was developing it for people with disability. And now it is widely used around the world, making millions of dollars for the person that made it. The person that invented OCR, same thing. But now we're using it to scan, we're using it to do everything. So when you think with that mindset, you might end up developing something that is very useful worldwide. So that's the benefit of thinking that way. I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Chimezi. And just to re-echo what you said, at the end of the day, when you build with everybody in mind, everybody truly benefits from it. And thanks for sharing those practical examples with us. I'm going to come to you now, Chizoba. How do you think innovators can ensure that they involve both educators and learners with disability in product design and testing?
For the question you asked, I want to start by saying nothing about us without us. When developers want to develop any software for persons with disability, they have to include persons with disability from the onset. One of the mistakes developers normally do is they will not involve persons with disability. They will develop on assumption, and maybe when they conclude, they will now call persons with disability to come and do the testing. So, but when they involve persons with disability from the starting of the development of that particular software, they will notice that at the end of the day, they will have an amazing result. Something happened in 2023. One of the Nigerian newspaper, I would not like to mention their name, they developed their app, and I was one of those that were called to come and test. And one of the mistakes they made is that they didn't involve us from the beginning of that software. So when they called us, we noticed that there are a lot of mistakes developers make. The thing wasn't accessible as they thought the thing was. So they have to go back and start all over again to develop that particular application in order to include persons with visual impairments accessing that particular app. So what I have to tell the developers is this: anytime you are trying to develop an application or software that you want to include persons with disability, please include them from the onset of the development of that software. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chizoba. I like the first statement you made, nothing about us without us. I'm sure that definitely would help innovators and developers. Mubarak, do you have something to share about this as well? How can innovators better involve educators and learners with disability during product design and testing?
Yeah, adding to what Mr. Chizoba said, what work for one disability may not work for another. So it is so simple as that. And when we are trying to, start any planning or any app creation or software for a person with disability, we need to carry them along from the onset, not at the end or the finished production of that very app. For example, there should be tests for screen readers, uh, hearing aids, speech recognition, adaptive keyboards, and probably how it can be functioning on mobile app and system. So those are the things I believe they need to put in place to carry the person with disability along from the initial stage of any innovation. So I believe with that, many learners and educators will be able to cope, and it will make whatever the innovators are planning to do or planning to bring in for person with disability to be more effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mubarak. You've shared with us that ensuring that there's representation even across the different spectrums of people living with disability, that definitely is key. Now, I know that there are a number of challenges that happen when innovators decide that they want to build accessible products locally. Can you share some of that with us, Dr. Victor?
Yeah, so I use myself as a case study, and when we're building Don AI, I'll say one thing that, and it's pretty much applicable to every EdTech founders out there, it's data, right? Data bias. Because we are actively fully involved in cognitive disabilities. These are our kids under neurodivergent spectrum, dyslexia, ADHD, autism, dyscalculia, right? And when we wanted to build our AI that pretty much take a neurotype profiling, so we understood that we had to do psychometric measures, a lot of computational neuroscience cases at the back end, just to be able to detect the spectrum a child is under a limited period of time. Ordinarily, if you are to do this outside for a family, for a mother, you would maybe pay like $500 or so, and the wait time is quite alarming. Kids in school, 3 months is a thing. They don't have 6 months to wait for a result that's not even conclusive. So we realized that we have to go back to the drawing book, actually use phenotype African data sets. These kids that are under the spectrum, we had to use that data to build our model. We built a neural foundational model. So one of the key challenges founders face is data. If you see a founder that wants to build for autism or even dyslexia or anything, they will still like, where did they get the data from?
So how is that, seeing that we have a population of about 36 million Nigerians? That's a large number of Nigerians.
And that leads us to, whenever I tell people that if you want to build for cognitive disability cases, you can't build in silo. There has to be interoperability. You have to work with key stakeholders, work with, where does this data come from? They come from parents, caregivers, wellness centers. Most families, parents, dads, they take their kids to hospitals. Hospitals still refer them to Vanderbilt for autism checkup. They can't afford it. So most of these, so when you bring this goal-based stakeholder, there's not how you want to solve for disability that you won't venture into health, mental cases, because that is the foundational level. So once you are able to understand that these goal-based stakeholders are important, then I think all those challenges of data cases and the likes, you overcome. That it worked for us. So and I would say the market is so huge. It's even untapped. Because when people talk about disability, they think, oh, it's just someone that is physically disabled. No, there are 1 out of 5 children is neurodivergent in the classroom. That's huge data. So that means there's room to build. You just have to build it the right way, get the data, build with the right infrastructure too. When we wanted to start, we were building around AI wrappers, but at some point it's like, no, we can't use OpenAI API to build. It's not possible. So the bigger guys like NVIDIA had to give us access to our own GPU. We build on our own GPU right now. We have 8 GPUs we build on. So what does that mean is we own the data, we own the modes, we have the solution, and we can pretty much understand
So it's
how
end to end for you
exactly
now.
end to end. It's not Western phenotype, it's not Western data set and the like. So that's just what I'll say about it.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Dr. Victor. I'm going to come to you, Chimezie. How do you balance affordability, accessibility, and sustainability as an EdTech business owner?
Okay. Yeah, such an amazing question. So if you're looking at affordability, I would say so, and sustainability as well. Where I'll come from, first of all, especially from the aspect of an EdTech founder, is very simple. First of all, listen. When you listen, you can, and I'll give a very, very like a very simple example. Listening helps solve a lot. And this is my example. In my first comment, I mentioned how whenever we're designing, it's important to think about the fact that there are people living with disability, right? And you look at your product, this is how we work. We look at our product and we know we cannot solve it for everybody with disability, but because we know that they exist, we're looking at which demographic around that is closest to what we're building so that we don't need to spend too much to include them in our own product development. But there's something I learned that I must do even moving forward. Chizoba and Mubarak mentioned something very important. For us, not without us. You can't build anything for them without them. So which means if we think about this demography and we say, oh, okay, what we're building is very easy for people that are autistic to learn from this. We don't just continue building and get to the end and say, look, this thing can also work for them. If we've identified that this is the demography that is closest to what we're doing, then we need to identify who are those people. And that goes back to what is it Victor was saying at the initially in terms of human-centered design, right? So if I see that this is the demography that is closest to me, I get them to be part of the discussion when I build. It makes it cheaper because now I'm not, even in terms of going back and forth, to go and re-engineer the whole system will not need to be done. So that's one. So listening and learning is very important, and human-centered design from the beginning will save the cost of you having to create something very expensive later. So that's number one. Number two is that when we think about sustainability, thinking about it from the get-go, awareness will always lead to sustainability. And for example, why I'm saying that is the only reason why, as an EdTech founder, I'm thinking of which disability is closest to what I'm building is because I've heard it over and over again that there's a very large market and there's a very huge serviceable market. If I wasn't hearing about it, if what you guys are doing with EdTech Mondays and inclusive conferences and things like that are not done, then I don't think about it. And then I just go to build what I want to build. So advocacy puts it in our head that we need to think inclusive when we are developing. Advocacy also helps us to think we need to think sustainability. So when we build, from the get-go, any EdTech product that is going to the market, if funders, for example, if grant givers, for example, if all of these people, if sustainability is one of the key things that will make them choose an intervention or an innovation. If, for example, you're giving a grant and you say, send us your proposal, send us what you're doing, tell us your sustainability plan, and 40% of the score in terms of what we're going to give you or what you're going to use to choose is based on your sustainability plan. I bet you all of them will go back and think about it before they come to the fore. So, but when sustainability is an afterthought, almost like when you get to the end of the project, okay, you finished. How do you think we can continue? It will always remain a problem. So bringing it to the forefront of the discussion is one of the first things. Now, for us, how we do it is that we've created, the way we create our solutions are such that they can be community owned right from when we kick off. So we do it in such a way that, yes, they are the subscription models, but the ones that are used in marginalized communities are not subscription based. So that when we give them these solutions, they are offline. They don't, a lot of them are offline, do not depend on repeated subscriptions. It means that no matter how expensive it was at the beginning, once they've been trained to continue with it, the second set, the third generation, fourth generation can continue to use it without any cost. And if you look at the galvanizing effect of it, you see how it drops the cost. So that's how we think about sustainability. But there's no one size fits all for everyone. So, but the point is that if advocacy can continue, and if people who are giving funding for such innovations to be produced can consider sustainability as one of the core reasons why they're going to fund these solutions, then it puts the onus on the innovators to think sustainability, just like it's putting the onus on us to think inclusivity when we're developing. And so, and I want to say thank you again to I'm also learning from this in terms of some of the things that we need to think about while we're thinking inclusivity as well.
Thank you very much, Chimezie, for sharing your own approach to ensuring that sustainability is a part of the business model right from the start. That's all we can take on today's episode of EdTech Mondays. One thing clear from today's discussion is that inclusion is not just about building projects or tools for learners with disabilities. It's about ensuring that learners can actually access, use, and sustain these tools within real learning environments. We'll leave you with this. How can EdTech solutions be intentionally designed for the users, learners with disability in mind from the start? Share your thoughts with us on social media or via SMS or WhatsApp at 0703 165 0809 or give us a call 0706 402 0742. Remember, you can continue this conversation on our WhatsApp and Telegram channels, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. And of course, past episodes are available on Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria, and on YouTube on CC Hub Africa. Your feedback will help shape the conversations that we host and of course the policy dialogues that we advocate for. Until next episode, I am Damilola Busari. Bye for now.
Tech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.